All right, so we are at the kind of critical part, the firing and glaze part. I've had my camera set up and trying to record the best kind of angles and set everything up really well. And it's quite tricky with my good camera. So I thought I'm just gonna do a quick run through on my phone. So sorry about the quality is probably not quite as good. But I just wanted to get something ready for those of you who are at this stage. So in terms of bisque firing, we keep things quite simple here. I bisque to 1,000 degrees. With our sand clays, I just find it takes the most amount of impurities out, and we just have less kind of chemicals in the kitchen, in the studio during the glaze firing. It's just kind of how I was taught, and so I always do it. I'm going to add our bisque schedules into the course instructions. I have 2 cycles. One is a really slow firing for kind of pieces with joins or bigger thick pieces. For the platters, as long as they're bone dry, then you're not going to have too many issues. So we make sure that ours are bone dry before we fire them, and then you're not going to have too many issues. So the bisque firing is pretty straightforward. I lie them flat on kiln shelves. I don't stack them. I don't put anything on top of them or anything around them. You can try. I've just had issues with this in the past. So you put so much work into these platters, it's better just to be safe. And then we put a clear glaze on them and fire them to cone 6. I don't have any fancy firing schedules. They're all pretty standard. And it is kind of depends a little bit on the clay that you're using and the glazes and stuff like that. So there's lots of variations to this, which is why this part of the course is quite challenging. So I'm going to try to put just more of a simple version of this through. Yeah, so I'm going to try to keep this as simple as I can. If you're firing in your own studio and you have your own kilns, just use the firing schedules that you've got. You'll know your kiln well, you'll know, and you can test with the glazes that you're using. And so you're best to follow your own schedules. I'm gonna run through all the glazing part of it. And then if you're at using a studio, like a community studio, especially if you're buying the clay bases from them, their kilns, the way most community kilns work is that they're programmed to be quite generic and operate for most clay and glaze sort of combos. But I will put all of our schedules in so you can follow those. And if you've got any questions, you can hit me up and we can help talk you through it. Usually, if you're using a specific clay, you can actually go onto the website of the the company that's made that clay. So let's just use Laguna as an example. Go onto the Laguna website, the actual clay that you've used, so white stoneware or whatever it is, and then they will often have a suggested firing schedule for that, or you can reach out and say, hey, how should I fire this? And things like Laguna, they have a Laguna clear glaze, so they are the perfect match. You're very rarely ever going to have any issues. And that's what I'm using today. The glaze you use does matter. So on this here, this is our West Coast clay. So I've used the Abbott's clear glaze on this, and the Abbott's clear glaze is really good. It's just a simple, basic clear glaze that highlights your work, essentially. But it can craze, so you have to use it very lightly. On the black clay, it's the only one that, for me, and the base clay I use, that comes out black. Beautiful. Then what you have is, and I knew this was going to happen, I knew it was going to react different, and this is why you have to do some test tiles and test the base clays that you're using with a clear glaze when you're wanting this speckled vibe that we're going for with our sand clays. So I used the Laguna clear glaze, which comes out stunning on Laguna clays, on our West Coast blend, and it came out this beautiful chocolate color, which I normally don't like, but I just felt like I wanted to have a bit of a play around, and I actually love it on this. I think it looks really cool. So that sort of shows, these are two slightly borings, exactly the same clay, two different clear glazes. So that's why you've really got to test and play around, make sure that you've got the right clear glaze for the right clay and that they work together. If you use the wrong clear glaze on the wrong clay and they don't bind, they can craze, they can crack, all sorts of things can happen. So even a simple glaze like a clear glaze can have lots of issues. So there's a lot to it. I'm going to keep this first recording of glazing quite simple, and as long as we follow through with doing some test tiles, not too much can go wrong. Make sure you got the right glaze fit with the right clay, using some test tiles, or if you've put a few pieces through already and it's working, then that's perfect. Keep that combo. Now we're just going to talk about the different applications. So the different types of application that I use all the time are dipping. So you've got a bucket of clay and you're just going to dip the piece in and then wipe the bottom. I use that for all our like mini lily bowls and those small simple pieces. Then our larger pieces like our platters, I use a spray gun. So I don't have a fancy setup. I bought a cheap spray gun from, it's called Bunnings, this brand Ortiz. It's just a paint gun. So literally a paint gun. They're a couple of $100. Most hardware stores and stuff like that, whichever country you live in, have a version of this. So go to a hardware store and you can get them for pretty cheap in most countries. It's just a simple paint gun, spray gun. And it has, this one is a power cord, a little tub here that you put your glaze in, and then a nozzle. And what I did for years before we moved into our studio is I would set up an extension cord outside on the front lawn and into a part of the garden where no one would sort of go. And I would spray all my work with the mask on and all that sort of stuff, because you need to be very careful with clay dust and glazes for silica poisoning. Spray it all outside and Bob's your uncle. And that's what I'm going to show you now. So that's going to be the first part, and that's how we spray our platters and any of the flat surface pieces. Things like vases, I'll show in a separate part. We're going to focus on the platters and spray gun first. If you don't have access to a spray gun, you don't want to buy one or anything like that, we're going to show you another technique, pouring the glaze over, which also works. And you can use a paintbrush to brush on. That you often get marks, so it's not ideal. The best is either dipping, which is hard with the big platters. Spraying, number one, that's what you want to do. Ideally, you can get yourself a spray gun, especially if you want to be selling these pieces. And yeah, so let's get into it. We're going to get into the spray gun straight away. Woo! All right, so I'm outside. I've set myself up a really cool little situation here. So this is called a bulkhead. It's like an old oil, bin that I've cut a side in that I used to spray in. Obviously, you need a bit of space to do something like that. So what I used to do before I had the bulkhead was just spray outside and clean down all of the residual kind of spray, the leftover glaze. But having this is ideal. So yeah, you can, if you don't have a safe ground to spray it on, what I've done in the past is put down a tarp, or you can from garden shops, you can get like spray tents and things like that for pretty cheap. Or you can put a tarp or plastic down or something like that. So what I've got is my little spray booth, which is They're called a bulkhead here. I don't know what they're called everywhere else, but it's like an old oil drum that I've cleaned out, put a hole in. And then I have my spray gun. This is filled with glaze. And then I've got all my platters and all that sort of stuff set up here. So it's fairly simple. You want to make sure that your surface of your piece is all ready to go. If there's any marks, you might want to sand them, and if you've sanded them, wash away so there's no dust or anything like that on them, because if there's dust and stuff, that's when things can get glaze cannot apply to it properly. But yeah, that's about it. I'm going to run through the demonstration of how I spray it, and yeah, let's go. Woo! Okay, I really wish I could show you the camera setup, how I've set my camera up like this, because I don't have a tripod. It's pretty crazy. Anyway, let's get into it. So I won't be able to talk because I'm putting a mask on, but I'll try my best to kind of talk you through it. I'll try my best to sort of talk you through it. So we're going to start off by spraying. You need to basically hold it at a certain point. We're going to spray through here, around here, and then spin it around and spray it. All right, let's get into it. Perfect. Okay, and that's it. A nice thin layer. Making sure that you go through all of the little crevices. Honestly, it just takes a bit of practice to make sure that you're getting it a really even job. Then ideally you want to set this aside for a couple of hours to let it really dry, and then it'll help you see where there's any little patches, or if the glaze is too thick, you can rub it in. So you want to go through, rub in. And that's it. Woo!